Hello, beautiful souls. Today's episode is so good. And before we jump in, I have some exciting news to share. If you've ever wondered where you're blocking money, this is for you. I've created a free quiz to diagnose your money wounds so you can heal them and unblock yourself to receive more money. Just go to moneywoundsquiz.com and answer 6 quick questions to get your insanely accurate and potent results. And if you're loving my vibe and want to work one-on-one to call in more feminine energy wealth, I would love to hear from you. You can shoot me a DM on social media or go to emilywilcox.com to learn more. Okay, Ashley Eve, welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm truly honored, honestly, to be here. So thank you.
Well, I feel that way too. Like, I'm a client of yours. I'm in your business by human design. And I feel like this industry is such a gift because we get to connect with the most fabulous human beings through so many ways, right? And so I'm excited to interview you today. And you jumped into Zoom with some super fabulous news. And I kind of just want to start there.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so what did you tell me?
All right. So today, just an hour before we hopped on, I finalized the deal on our dream property. And I'm telling you, it's a farm. So we're getting back to farm life with the horses. And when I tell you the dream property, I literally drew this out from my mind's eye over and over and over again over the years. And it's as if someone took that picture, went to a vacant lot, and it just materialized on the lot. So it is a dream come true.
I just got chills all over my body.
Yes. Oh my goodness, me too. It's still integrating because it was just an hour ago it finalized, where it's still integrating. And it's that reminder of how powerful we are at creating our lives. And we truly can create a life wilder than our dreams, because there was always a part of me that thought that's too wild to have a property like that in the area you want. And here it was.
I'm so happy for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
And I knew it would be a farm because you got all the animals, all the things.
All the animals. And of course, on the day we're talking, it all happens. So it's just always meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about like rolling over this picture in your mind's eye. And you're an expert in human design. And one of the things that I think is often talked about in human design is whether you're a specific or a non-specific. And I love you because you always have a spicy take.
Yes, that's what I'm known for.
Very refreshing and a different perspective. So what is your take on specific versus non-specific manifesting?
Yes. So I'm trained by the International Human Design School, and that is actually not of Rottru's science of differentiation. So that variable, it's part of the primary health system that the variable specific versus non-specific manifestation came about. And it's our perspective on our view on life, essentially. So I do, if we were following the specific versus non-specific manifestation, I would be specific. So I guess we could say there is that thread, and I can see where people are coming from with that, because it is something that I went over and over again. But if we are looking at the science of differentiation, Rottru's transmission, it is our view on life. It wouldn't have been brought into manifestation.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I technically am a specific manifester as well. That's probably one of the pieces of human design that I've resonated with the least, and maybe that's why. But I just, from my own personal experience, it's like sometimes when we get too granular, we freak ourselves out and we actually don't create the feeling that we're looking for. And we always manifest from feeling. So it's like, I always tell my clients, like, zoom out until you get to a place where it just feels good. So if all of the details are making you think, well, who am I, or I can't have this, or that doesn't exist, well, that's not the vibe. So let's get less specific. How do I want to feel in the space? Oh, okay, that's enough.
Yes. And I love that you mentioned that, because when I first started coaching online, I used to have a personal training studio. So I had a business before this. And when I started training online, I love that you mentioned the feeling, because I used to say to everyone, I can feel what it's going to be like unloading my horses on the property. I can feel the emotions welling up inside of me, pulling down the driveway, and finally being able to tell the boys, my horses, you're home. And it was that emotion that drove me this whole time, and that kept me on that vision and kept me in the vision, was the emotion of one day soon, I'm going to be opening a trailer door and walking the horses off a trailer into their own barn on my own property. And it was that emotion. So I love that you mentioned that, because it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, there was like one specific piece for you, which was like, okay, it's the trailer, but then it's like, maybe you were able to see exactly what the property looked like, or maybe not, but who cares either way?
Exactly. And I love that you mentioned this. There's aspects of the property that aren't what I had envisioned. And at the end of the day, it was that emotion that drove the whole piece, and just seeing it come to life. And I feel that it's going to be less than a month from now where I'm unloading them on the property, and I can feel those emotions just like the day when I first told my clients that I could feel it. It's really incredible.
Oh, that is so special. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for your horses and the
Thank
dogs.
you.
Like, everyone's going to love this new space.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited to also get a dog rescue going on it. That's the big dream. So there's a lot coming to life right now that, it really, I truly believe when we follow strategy and authority in human design, life is wilder than our dreams, because as Richard Rudd from Gene Keys says, how could we ever actually know the next step, or how fast things can happen, or what is next for us? Yeah. And, if you had asked me a month ago, if we had been sitting here a month ago, I would have said, yeah, one day that'll happen. I can see it happening one day. And yet it happened seemingly overnight.
Yeah. Well, and our souls crave the unknown. It's really only our human that wants to map it out and figure out when it's going to happen and what it's going to look like in advance. And so, of course, we're not really meant to know all of it or know how it's going to unfold, because that's what our soul is here for.
Yes, exactly. And it is. I love that you mentioned that, because and from a human design perspective, it's exactly what you're saying, where it's that not self mind that's driving it. It wants that certainty. It wants to have a fixed identity, a fixed direction. The undefined ajna wants certainty on what's next. The undefined head center is thinking about things that don't matter. And yet that's the human aspect, but the soul knows. And when we can really surrender and release our grip on control, and just, the image that always, I'm very visual, comes to life, is kind of just leaning back on the river of our life. Our strategy and authority, our soul brings us in the direction we were always meant to go.
I love that so much. And I will say that that is a work in progress for me. Like, there is certainly the part of my masculine energy that wants to figure it out and know the plan and execute on the plan and be a very important part of it and have control around it. And yet, it's like, when I really get honest with myself, it's like, okay, would I rather be telling the story of, I visualized the dream property, I knew exactly down to the square footage and the floor plan exactly what it was going to be, and I mapped out how long it would take, and sure enough, on that exact date, over that time, it worked out exactly how I thought it was going to? Or would I rather tell the story of, oh my God, the timing was so different and it was so much better and all of these magical things aligned and I can't believe it. It's stranger than fiction. And yet here it is and it's my life.
It's true. And I could not have written this. I could not have written this story. And I always say that everything that's happened in my life, with money, with business, with meeting incredible people, I couldn't have planned that. Yeah. It's when you follow soul, when you follow strategy and authority, it truly does get to be wilder than your wildest dreams.
Yeah. Okay. Well, since we do talk about money on this show, are you open to sharing what you paid for this dream property?
Yeah, absolutely. So the dream property was $899,000 Canadian. And it was, it's funny because we had for so long also said we will never find a property under $1.5 million in Ontario, Canada. That I live close to Toronto, and the market's just crazy around here. And we said, if we see a property under $1 million, it's got to be a sign. And we did. And it's exactly the area we dreamed of. So again, also, if you had asked me a couple years ago, I would have never dreamed of being able to afford a property at that price ever. I would have actually laughed at you about 3 years ago if you asked me.
Just 3 years ago.
Just 3 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have laughed at the prospect of affording a property like that.
That's unbelievable. Well, I'm so excited to like dig into your entrepreneurial journey and your money journey and all of that. But I also just want to say, as a reflection for you, and maybe you can dig into this a little bit more, I really see you walking the talk as far as letting your dreams lead you and choosing to build your business strategically in a way that lines up with your dreams. And I know that the animals have been a huge part of that. So perhaps just give us what that dream and vision has been, and maybe a few of those business decisions you've made that felt really important to be aligned with that bigger goal.
Oh, I love that. So I guess we'd have to go back a little bit because my background's in psychology, and I've had from the time I was a child a dream of having an animal rescue. And I worked in animal rescue where I was actually helping children also come up with their dreams, and they were coming up with the idea of animal rescues and saving animals. So this had always been a seed that's been in my mind since the time I was a child. And that was a piece of my heart that led me all of these years of getting to a place where I could afford a farm, where I could rescue animals. And my financial reality, I mean, I declared bankruptcy after university. I came from a family that had a lot of money issues. There was a part of me, my conscious mind, that said, that's not for you. That's never going to be for you. You can't even afford groceries. How could you one day afford to run an animal rescue? How could you afford to one day have a big property? And so when I actually got into business online, I had a big push and pull in the beginning where it was between really following what I knew to be true for me and following what I was told was the right thing to do. And every step of the way, I've trusted strategy and authority in a way that I felt even if I mess up, or I perceive that I messed up, or I perceive that I took a wrong step, I trust that I'm always in the right place at the right time. Robert, who said that when you follow strategy and authority, it doesn't mean that everything goes perfect. It means everything's meant for you. So every step of the journey, even this year has been a very challenging year overall. Every step of the journey, I've known that those steps have been a piece of the puzzle for me. So my focus in my business and my focus on how to build a business was one first. And I am a right angle cross of service. So it seems like it, of course, but service first, serving humanity first, serving my community first. That's been a driving force every step of the way. Every step of the way, it truly is. I wake up in the morning and my soul, my body, my sacral is lit up, knowing I get to impact other people and help other people awaken to their dreams and realize their dreams and be fully them. And so around the decisions of the business, it's been service first, the customer even journey and pathway first. How can I make it make sense for them? And how can I have a pathway that awakens them rather than traps them in the not self? And then as well from there, a pathway in my business that gives me freedom, because I knew that I didn't want a hamster wheel. I had done that when I first started, where it was launching every single month and a lot of launches. And a realization happened for me where, Ashley, if you truly desire to run a sanctuary, compete with your horses, rescue animals, and have a life of freedom, you have to build a business that also allows you to have freedom. So it's been this balancing act between strategy and soul, customer service, client service, service to humanity with my gifts and what I'm passionate about, and also building a life of freedom and fulfillment and truly thriving for myself and my family. So when we come back to the sacral and those sacral decisions, I always, and this is what I say to my clients as well, we don't follow strategy and authority from who we are right now. We follow strategy and authority from our next level self, from the person that's already living it, from the person that's already doing it. So every decision I came back to in my business was, is this a yes or no from the sacral based on the Ashley that's already living that vision? And then allowing those pieces to come into place and allowing myself to fall on my face sometimes and not judge myself.
Yeah, I love that perspective of getting the sacral yes or no from this next level version of you. I've never heard it quite that way before, but that totally lands. Yeah. And so I think some of the decisions that I've witnessed you make have been in terms of like how much one-on-one you're doing, live courses versus evergreen programs. And so, like you said, it was like, well, if I want to be able to be really present with my animals, if they need something today, like I don't have a full schedule of calls, I can take them to the vet, we can, whatever.
Yes.
Then am I building the business in accordance with that? Or am I filling up my schedule with a bunch of one-on-one calls and then wondering why I don't have the time freedom for my animals?
Yes. And that was a big trap I got into. And I hit a place where I was burned out. And at first and this is going back a couple of years, and I thought it was, it's just a sacral plateau. It's a generator plateau, but it was true burnout when I look back on that, because it was a scheduled build or full from start in the morning till the end of the day, one-on-one calls, live courses. And while there was a passion for it, what I feel, again, from answering these questions and following our strategy and authority from the next level self, I had built this business that sure was fun in the beginning. I loved being live, and I do love being live, and I love working with one-on-one clients, and I get really lit up. However, like you said, especially when we got Julia with all her medical problems, it wasn't realistic. And so I love to look at the long-term vision when we're building businesses and looking at wealth generation and reoccurring income in our business from, again, who's that future version of you and what's the type of future and freedom she desires. And so it might be fun how the business is running right now. Yet, do you have a child that you want to have in the next year, 2 years, an animal sanctuary you desire to have? And what does your freedom require to be then? And we can build the business now. And that's what changed my life when I started answering the yes, no questions from the Ashley that was already living that dream.
Okay, so let's rewind. And you talked about growing up in a household where there was a lot of financial drama. So give us some highlights or lowlights really on the journey between growing up with not the best money mindset, probably some trauma around money and not necessarily feeling safe or that it was going to be there for you and to support you. And, maybe not even feeling like you had the capacity for these big dreams because you really needed to be focused on survival. So how did you get from there to here?
Yeah, it was, I have clients a lot say to me, but you don't understand. And I'm so grateful for the experiences I went through because I do understand what it's like to have that money trauma and have that mindset around money that it could never happen for someone like you. And that's what I used to tell myself when I was younger. And that really did develop also this lone wolf identity, which no longer served quite a long time ago, but almost a hyper independence. So when I was growing up, my family really did do everything they could so I could have the horses. I was riding very young. I was very fortunate in that respect. And it caused a lot of issues in my family because my dad was picking up a lot of overtime to afford the horses. My mom was picking up a lot of overtime to afford the horses. It created a lot of tension in their marriage, a lot of mental health issues with my father. And this is stuff actually, to be honest, I've never talked about online before. So this is all new that I'm talking about. A lot of mental health issues with my father. And my mom had ended up ending the marriage and kicking my dad out. And I was a daddy's girl growing up. So seeing this dissolve in front of my eyes and feel as though it was my fault because it was the horses. It was always the fighting around the horses. We had purchased a farm that really extended my parents' finances, and it was always fighting around the horses, fighting around the farm. My mom didn't want to be on a farm. And as a child, I really took that on as, well, it's your fault. Your parents broke up because of you. Your dad's struggling with his mental health because of you. They're working so hard because of you. And I had all of these beliefs that I took on, and I'll never forget the day that my pony and my horse were sold. And I remember loading him on the trailer and wishing I was old enough to have my own farm so I didn't have to do that. And I was about 12 at the time. And I promised him, I'm now going to tear up. I promised him that I would find him again one day. And I said, when I have enough money, I'm going to find you. And I gave him a kiss on his nose and he left. And just a few years ago, I did try to track him down and he's since passed away. I tried to track down my horse that was given away at that time. And there's a tragic story around that happened. I didn't have the finances at the time to bring her home. And there was this spark, and I'm getting chills, a spark within me along my journey of, this can't be it for you. You know, you're made for more. You know that you have this big mission on your heart and this destiny, not just in serving others. I've known that from the time I was young. I love helping people. Of course, I went to school for psychology. I was a counselor. I love helping animals. And I thought from the time I was in university, there's more for you here, but you have to get over this. Like, you have to move past this. You can't be a victim to life and expect to create what you know you're here to create. So I had gone through all of that. When I was a counselor, I literally was picking up shifts at a group home so I could get food. I didn't have enough money. I was making $15 an hour, which now looking back on is just wild. Picking up shifts, I'd pick up overnights, I kid you not, so I could do laundry because I couldn't afford to do laundry where I was renting an apartment. And again, it was just this knowing underneath the surface that I was made for more. And that it was just this feeling, and it wasn't specific in terms of how much or anything like that, but you're made for more in this whisper that would never go away. And when I actually was starting a business behind the scenes, I was still in corporate. And I had taken the corporate job, left my job in psychology and counseling so I could afford one of my horses. It paid $600 more a month, which was the payment plan. It took me 18 months to pay off $11,000 for my horse, Loki. The breeder agreed to a payment plan. So I took this corporate job and I finally said, I've had enough. You either are inspired to change your life or you reach desperation. I had hit desperation. And I said, enough is enough. My poor husband one day woke up and I'm sitting at the kitchen table and he goes, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be at work? I said, no, I'm starting my business.
Surprise.
Surprise. And he goes, what do you mean? Like, you quit your job? I said, yep. I said, I have $200 and I'm going to get stuff from my office. And I was so calm. I honestly think he thought, she's having a breakdown. Some things. I was so calm. I knew. And I had been learning human design behind the scenes for over a year at the International Human Design School. And so I have $200 in my account. So we were living paycheck to paycheck. And I live in the middle of nowhere. If anyone's ever seen the show Letterkenny, that I live in Listowel, so in the middle of nowhere in Ontario. And the only place that was open at the time was Walmart. And I think it was Dr. Joe Dispenza says you have to think greater than your environment. So I said, I need to change up my office. I can't think like old Ashley. And so I went to Walmart, got flamingo decals, which I'm not a flamingo girl. Like, they're cute and all, but got flamingo decals for my wall and a bunch of like happy sayings, put them up on my wall, got my pens. I was so proud of myself. And I said, this is the beginning of the rest of our lives. And that month was a $10,000 month. And my business had spread like wildfire, where I was serving actors, Netflix directors, Broadway actors. And it was wilder than I could have ever imagined.
Wow. And was that through social media?
Mm-hmm. It was all through social media. At the time, I had been learning about human design and I wasn't a mastermind at the time, but it was one of those things again, where it was one day I'll apply this knowledge and start a business, until I truly had that sacral. It was like, it's a hard no for you going back into corporate. And so they knew me from learning human design. At the time, I was still a personal trainer behind the scenes. And they started spreading that word. They knew me, they knew my passion for it. They started spreading the word. And I showed up every day on Instagram Live and every day on Facebook. I would go live on both. I didn't know anything about how to do them the same time or anything at the time. I was still learning all of this, but I had a fire in my heart. There was this light, this switch that was flipped, and it was just, you have to stop shitting the bed. You have to go after your dreams. Now is the time. You know you're made for more. The only one that can accomplish what's in your heart is you. You have to go for it. So I'd go live on Instagram every day, live on Facebook every day. And it was just, everyone could feel that passion. And word was spreading so fast. It was crazy. I even had people that would end up on foundation calls with me that I don't even know how this happened, but 2 people that had to use fake names because they said that, no one can know who they are and people are looking for them. And that's what one person had run away from a cult, and she's like, no one can know where I am but my name, but I had heard about you through the grapevine. It was wild. And It just built from there. And I really believe it was just, again, that passion. It was never about, I just wanted to make what I made in corporate. Yeah. I didn't, at that time in the mastermind I was in and the circles I was in, I didn't know 30, 40, 50 plus $1,000 months were available. I just wanted to make $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month. And so when it started happening at that speed, I could have never planned that in a million years. And just the way things blew up.
That is incredible. And I think you speak to something that I think we often undervalue, which is that people already like us. They already feel our magnetism. They already kind of want a pathway to have more proximity to us. But until we make that offer, they don't have it. And so it's like the first people that were buying from you weren't strangers on the internet. They were people who already knew you and already liked you and were already like, I want more of this chick in my life in one way or another. And so as soon as you come along saying, hey, here's what I'm doing now, and I'll give you a human design reading, people were like, take my money, sign me up. I want to learn from you, and I want to be in your energy.
And I think it says so much for when we truly just give ourselves the permission to do what we want to do and say what we want to say. There's people in your audience, there's people around you that already want to pay you. They're just waiting for you to say the thing that creates that energetic connection. Yeah. And it was that simple, where one day I was literally talking about fitness. The next day I'm talking about human design, because not many people knew I was studying it behind the scenes. I didn't know a lot of spiritual people. I thought everyone was going to think I was crazy. I thought especially my husband was going to be very concerned. Combined with the fact I walked out of my job, and I didn't really tell anyone. And this is another aspect of really claiming that next level version of who you are and how things are meant to go, because I wasn't apologetic. I didn't show up and kind of cower and say, if you are interested in this. I showed up and I was like, look, I'm the human design queen. If you want to learn this, I'm who you go to. I've been studying this with raw students at the International Human Design School, and I can bring this information to you in the way it was meant to be transmitted. And it was unapologetic from day one. And I just claimed who I knew I was meant to be. And the energy always follows that. And there's people there waiting for you to just claim it.
So did you ever have like the people pleaser, good girl energy, or have you always been more of like the unapologetic bad girl?
I would say I've always been that unapologetic bad girl, which it's kind of a love me or hate me energy, I think. So I'm not overly filtered. And I think that's just been who I've been my whole life. I've just allowed more of it to come out in the online space and over the last couple of years, and just owning that aspect of myself. There was a time where I was what I called almost a distorted rebel, where it was a lone wolf rebel, almost without a cause, where there had been so much trauma in my life where it was like, don't just leave me to be. I don't want help from anyone. I can do it by myself. And when I truly came into this more sacred rebel space, this revolutionary space, I used it as a superpower, where it's like, actually, no, I can use this energy as like bad girl, rough around the edges, kind of prickly is what my husband says I can be sometimes, energy for good and to really create shockwaves and change in this world. So there was a big shift in that energy. And when I shifted in that energy is really when my business blew up too.
I believe it. I suspect, although I don't know, that probably a lot of people that hire you are also wanting to stretch into being more unapologetic, really using their voice, clearing out the throat chakra.
Yes.
So do you have any tips that you can share if people are wanting to just speak more on the frequency of truth and not be so filtered?
Yeah, I think the first thing that is a game changer for me is I have a morning routine that's non-negotiable, and I always go in before out. And this is something I say to my clients all the time: go in before out. Don't touch your phone. If you can avoid it, don't talk to anyone. It's tough with kids, of course, but if you can avoid it, don't talk to anyone. spend time going in, listening to soul, listening to what's trying to come through, allowing yourself to be a vessel for miracles, allowing yourself to be a vessel for a truth that's so much bigger than you, and to practice. And there was a big piece of just practicing first with that. And I would write it down in my journal. And in the beginning, when I was getting more confidence around this online, I would write it in my journal, and my blog post for that day online would be literally my journal writing. And that's how I started to build that muscle where it was not allowed to be filtered. I wasn't allowed to change the words that were coming out. I would literally sit down in the morning, connect with soul, connect with my body, connect with self. And what is the message that is coming through today? What is the message people need to hear today? And that's usually the biggest DM I get is that's a message I needed to hear today. And so that's a non-negotiable I have in my morning. And I notice a difference right away if I stop that routine where I start going up into my head of what should I say today? And as soon as I get into, or if you notice, anyone notices words like, what do I have to say to get attention? Or what should I say to get attention or to go viral? That's where I create so much resistance. So it's always coming back to soul. And then as a generator, of course, allowing the response to happen rather than trying to come up with a great idea from the mind. I always allow the world to come to me and then respond from that place. And in terms of building that confidence muscle, yeah, I would just say practice connecting to self. The journal is great. Just let it loose in the journal and practice bringing that right into the business.
I love that. What a great idea. Because then there's like built-in accountability to it. Like it reminds me back in like my avid CrossFitting days, and especially like in the first couple of years, they would post on the website every day what the workout was going to be. And I made an agreement with myself that I would never look and see what the workout was going to be and then decide whether or not I was going to go to class. It was like, if I'm going, I'm going. And then I can look and see what the workout is just so I can kind of mentally get prepared for it. But I'm not willing to cherry pick and avoid certain movements. And so it's like you can play that commitment game with yourself where once it's in your journal and it's right there, it's in pen, it's on paper, then it's like, how much of that can I translate? And you'll start to probably notice the places where it feels really crunchy. And it's like, oh, okay. This is where I have to do some inner work.
Yes. And you'll notice exactly where the crunchy spots are, where the spots you want to tidy it up. Yeah. Instead of saying a certain word that you wrote in the journal, you pretty it up a bit or bring out more of the good girl so you don't trigger anyone. Yeah. And it's such a beautiful mirror on where we start to filter. And so that was my practice. And I love that analogy because I love CrossFit. It's such a great analogy.
Perfect. So you know.
Yes.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about your business now. Like how much revenue are you doing? Where do clients find you? How do you have your different offers structured?
So we do a minimum. I like to set up recurring income in the business. So after bills are paid, we end up with about 40 to 50,000 in recurring income monthly. And then any surprise one-on-one clients or anything extra that comes on. Sometimes I have the energy for an extra masterclass or a workshop that comes up, but that would be our base on what is reoccurring. And I usually do that the year before. So this time of year, I'm looking at next year and what I'm going to be offering and what I'm going to be structuring so that I can have that type of cushion in the business and cushion in life. So that's what I do in terms of the reoccurring income. And then for the business itself, what I focus on right now is my mastermind and one-on-one. And then a lot of my programs, I've already done them. There's no need to do them again. I always say record it once. I don't need to record Business by Human Design again or Keys to Cash again or any of that. It's already done. So I have my entry-level programs. Usually people get a feel for me at my program level or my workshop level, and then they work their way up to my mastermind and one-on-one. The way I have my business set up as well is everyone can move, I hate to say levels because I feel it makes it seem as one level's better than the other, but people can move from one-on-one and they'll jump in a course or from the mastermind up to one-on-one, but go back into a course. And the pathway is so simple and it's easy for me too. I have too many balls in the air with the animals and everything to make my business model too complicated. It's so simple that it's an easy pathway for people to walk, and it allows people to also choose from their inner authority, what's best for them. And in my goal in the business, I want people to get what they need so that they can move on. That was a big thing for a long time when I had programs where I was launching monthly. And I thought, what if we just put it all in one place and people can get what they need and move on from there? And Business by Human Design is definitely one of those pieces. It's like a core offer where it has basically everything you need. Next step would be Iconic, my mastermind. And I just keep it so easy. I keep it very simple and a pathway that makes sense for people.
I love that. So I'm imagining that like most of the recurring revenue is coming from the mastermind and the one-on-one, because those people are signing up for probably a longer commitment, right? And then do people find their way into your programs and your workshops and such through social media? Or I think, do you do a podcast? You do something on YouTube, don't you?
I do YouTube. I do a podcast. So the CEO Psyche is my podcast, and Instagram's probably my main platform that I hang out on. And I would say about 95% of my mastermind and one-on-one clients find me from the podcast. And Instagram tends to be more of a place where people find me and end up in my workshops or my programs, those types of places. But definitely the podcast, I would say, is my number one place where people find me. And it's just like a wealth of information. So by the time I know someone even found me, they're like, I listened to all 104 episodes. How do I hire you?
Yeah. I know podcasts are wild that way. I'll have people that are like, oh, the reason I said that I want to make $30,000 months is I remember that post that you wrote like 2 years ago where you said that, for the most part, until you start hitting 30K months, you're probably not going to feel a lot of surplus. And it's like, I forgot I even wrote that. And same thing in the podcast. People will say like, I listened to that podcast on such and such, and you said, and I'm like, I did? I said that. I forget, but it lives forever,
It does. Podcasts are amazing, and they're so bingeable too. I love listening to podcasts, and I always think of where are my dream clients hanging out, and my dream clients are listening to the podcast while they're doing things and living their best life. So it's a place I love hanging out and giving a lot of value, and YouTube's great as well. But I would say podcast is probably the number one spot.
So tell us more about the animal rescue now that you've got your dream property.
I'm so excited. So the big goal, I have my 4 horses, which are my sport horses, but the big goal is to have a dog rescue and also bring in some horses that are meant for slaughter. There's a lot of horses in Ontario, especially, that end up at what we call Olex, is like the big auction here in this area. And they end up going for slaughter. So the goal is to have this place and what we're going to implement. And our real estate agent was laughing because when we saw the house, he said, "Oh, Scott," to my husband, "you know what's going to happen as soon as you get the keys? There's going to be an animal rescue here." So the number one piece for me is giving a safe spot for horses that were bound for slaughter. And I'd love to bring back, and the goal is to bring back an equine assisted therapy program. I used to run an equine assisted therapy program with Canadian Mental Health Association. And it's such a fabulous program. And especially when it's horses that were on the path to such fate, it really does create an incredible healing environment for people as well, and the horses.
Yeah.
And then for dogs, I'm so passionate about helping dogs, especially from the north in Ontario, and international dogs that, it's just such a cause close to my heart. We want to have foster homes, also have the medically needy ones on site with us, but foster homes, and really have a safe landing for medically needy dogs. And that was a passion that came about when I met Julia. I always knew I wanted to have an animal sanctuary for dogs, but when we met Julia and she got diagnosed with megaesophagus, a PRAA, IBD. I mean, she had open heart surgery within the first couple of weeks of us adopting her. There was a passion for helping these dogs that don't have a voice, because I am noticing a lot of them get euthanized. No one knows how to treat them. Yeah. So we're hoping to provide a spot for medically needy animals as well. And it gets me like right in the heart and so choked up, because this is something from the time I was a kid that's been on my heart, and it's finally here.
Thank you so much for sharing that vision. And you are an inspiration. Everyone should be connecting with you online. I love the precision with which you speak and you serve, it really does feel very unapologetic, and it feels so clear. And that clarity is such a gift because it really cuts through all of the noise in the space. And, you know, you were one of the first ones that I saw that was like, yeah, I love horses and dogs. Like, of course, I'm going to talk about that in my business, and I'm going to share that on my feed. And like, just bringing all of you to the table and not feeling like, oh, I have to be so niche that I only talk about human design, or now that I'm into gene keys, let me just talk about that. No, there's space for all of you.
There is. I'm so passionate about that. There is space for all of you. And then that allows you to attract the right people into your life and into your business. So many of my clients are passionate about animals and have horses or want horses. So it's just a beautiful journey. And, you know, even from the time we adopted Julia, the whole community, my whole business community is cheering her on every step of the way because they've seen her from the beginning till now. And it is such a permission slip to bring all of you to the table. I love that.
Yeah. So where can people connect with you and tune in more to what you're doing?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I am Ashley Briana Eve. On the podcast, it's the HD CEO Psyche, which is just such a wealth of information. And then if they were to search my name on YouTube, there is a ton of content on YouTube as well that tends to be the podcast and YouTube human design information, and a little bit more life over on Instagram.
Amazing. So to wrap this up, one of my missions is to help women really discover and embody their luxe life. And I would just love to hear from you. What is the vision for your luxe life?
I love this question because it is so different. And I talk to everyone about how it's okay to have a different vision on what the luxe life is. Yes. So mine, honestly, I mean, I love getting dressed up with the makeup and the hair and the cool outfits and stuff. And that's certainly a part of me. My luxe life is farm life. My luxe life is going out in the morning and taking care of the animals, being on the farm, having a garden, and of course, having the wealth to do all of that and to live our wildest dreams. We're desiring to also get a property up in Muskoka in the next year to have retreats at. So that's all a part of it. And yet for me, luxe is very much saving animals, changing the world, impacting the world. One of my closest friends, her and her husband used to own one of the biggest vitamin companies in the world, and they sold it and they invest the money into saving animals. They invested $1 million in the University of Windsor to help end animal research and animal testing. And to me, that, like, I'm driven every day for wealth and overflow and prosperity and serving so I can change it. It sounds so corny, but to change this world really and make a difference and leave a legacy of, oh my gosh, this woman made a difference while she was here, and she helped animals, and she changed the view on how we look at megaesophagus dogs and animals, horses that are no longer useful. She changed the world. And that's all I want. That's all I want, is to know I left an impact.
Yeah. What a beautiful vision for your luxe life. Thank you so much for being here, Ashley. I so appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. Before you go, I have something fun to share. Now, when you leave a review of the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, take a quick screenshot and send it to hi@emilywilcox.com. You'll be entered into a drawing to win a free one-on-one boxer coaching day with me, and you help the show reach more new listeners. Such a win-win. I also invite you to follow me on Instagram @mmakesmoney and to jump into my free Telegram community, The Money Club, which is linked in the show notes. Until next time, I'm sending you all the magic money vibes.